third page, you'll see something called Figure 1. And I didn't pick the Dallas-Fort Worth area for comparison because I knew Mike will be sitting next to me. He's just the best thing to compare ourselves to. We try to benchmark ourselves against their performance all the time. But what you see here is what you already know, that our state grew rapidly over the last decade. That was true for the state, for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for our region. I'll brag a little on our region. We added about 1.4 million people during that time period, over 500,000 jobs, and I think that was probably the greatest amount of growth of any of our urban areas in the state. If you'll turn to the second slide, this gets in a little bit of the technical area, but you hear about vehicle miles of travel from people like us all the time. It is an important measure not only of the performance of our system, about its output, its contribution to our economy, but the vehicle miles traveled has become incorporated into many of the funding formulas that we currently use today. What you're probably wondering about, if you're looking at the chart, is that despite the growth in our state, the growth in vehicle miles of travel has been much more modest. And oddly, for our particular part of the state in the Houston-Galveston area, the 8-county region, you can see that really the estimates of vehicle miles of travel from the state are where we were in 2004. So if that puzzles you, it puzzled us as well. There are reasons why I think this has occurred. Some of it has to do with the fact that we use the best data available, but that data was often designed years ago to serve one purpose, and now we're making it serve several. The data source for this is called the Highway Performance Monitoring System, and I won't get into that, but let me just simply say it was designed to give a view of how states were doing in terms of the use, the performance, the condition of their highway networks. And it's based upon a sampling system, never really designed to be used across a dozen or 20 different parts of the state, but because it was the best system we had, that's how we've used it. We have, in the next slide, in the Figure 3 slide, another little analysis I did on the back of the envelope is to say, well, how does that look if you consider the growth in population in our region? And I kind of wish this were true. I wish that we had more and more people traveling together in vehicles and fewer vehicle miles in our region, but our experience with congestion levels suggests that's not entirely the case. And again, you see a significant difference between the average vehicle miles traveled if we look at the state as a whole. I'm not picking on the Dallas-Fort Worth region, and I don't want to suggest the VMT should be the same or very close to being the same in Dallas-Fort Worth as it is in Houston. They have a significantly greater number of interstate lane miles in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This brings traffic from not only across the state, but out across the country through their region. Their planning region is about 20% larger than ours. So there are some differences and should be differences between areas. I think the concern I had was just how the magnitude of those differences have grown. We've done some analysis and been working with TXDOT staff to look at why the vehicle miles of travel may not be accurately reflected in the past 3 to 5 years for our region. And most recently, TXDOT's preliminary numbers for 2015 show about a 12% increase in the vehicle miles traveled in 1 year for our area. So again, helpful, interesting too. We think that we need about another 10% increase in that number to be where we think our results are. And we're comparing information, for example, from our toll road authorities that collect transaction data at many locations every day of the year to what has been estimated in the Highway Performance Monitoring System, and see very large gaps in other areas as well. I think these are issues which I have some recommendations on how we can look at those, improve that data, and make sure it is more consistent over time, because as we move to performance-based decision making, we do not want the data to be an issue. I do have a concern, which I'm going to express to you and request some future discussion, and that is that the allocation in this year's UTP of new revenue is very substantial. In the past, although think we have a rule adopted on this, the Commission has used latest information for making new allocations of funding to the UTP. But that does not mean that new information is used to adjust previous commitments that have been made. And you're not doing that with this document. You're considering adding $32 million to your existing UTP, bringing the total to over some $60 billion. I hope I'm saying the right number there, $60 billion to the state. So as a consequence, if as I hope, we'll see the statewide estimates for travel improve in our region, I'll be in the odd position of seeing that 10 years worth of very substantial funding was really not made with the best information. So I'd like to just suggest that we continue to talk about that, discuss ways that it might be mitigated, certainly try to make sure it doesn't occur in the future. But that was a long explanation on a particular issue related to our area. I apologize for that, but I think it does suggest that as we go forward, those folks who do some of those wonky data-driven things are going to be very important to this process, and we certainly want to make sure we've adequately resourced and addressed those issues. So thank you. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Michael Morris, Director of Transportation.